What are double stops and why should you use them to get better at drumming? So it's a string term that has been used by drummers. The string players, when they would play on 2 strings at once, they'd call it a double stop. And we have borrowed that idea to say playing with 2 hands at the same time. So playing something in isolation can prevent like a direct comparison. So for example, if you're playing what your right hand does when doing a flam accent, and then you do that off your left, it might sound fine isolating out just the right, isolating out just the left, but you don't have that direct comparison of being able to see, well, what do my hands look like? You're kind of having to go off of memory, which again makes it so that you are not only having to focus on playing, but you're also having to split your attention so you're focusing on the analysis at the same time, which can create an issue. A double stop allows you to actually practice listening in with yourself. So in order to match both the velocity or touch of your hands playing together. So when you're doing like the flam accent pattern, instead of playing it on just the right hand, play it as a double stop so that way you can see, does my right hand and left hand match the heights? Or is it like where like the left hand is super high? Or am I playing with like a different velocity so that like the right hand and the left hand are playing at a different speed when doing this? So if you hear a cha sound or a flam sound, then that is not ideal. What you want is a popping sound, the little pop. Do both hands at the same time, and that's for both the accents and for the taps. There are some exercises that I have that specifically allow you to work on double stops. So this is in the technique section. There's a playlist that says double stops right here, and when you click on this, it's got a variety of different exercises that are specifically designed to work on your double stops. So for example, some of the ones that recently came out were the fulcrum control exercises. So this is a great way to work on your spacing in your taps, as well as like the spacing physically in your hand, the changes that you make from playing an accent into some interior notes with some taps. You can play this all on the right hand, you can play this on the left hand, but ideally you play through this exercise as double stops so you can hear whether or not your taps sound like flams or they get that popping sound in there. This particular playlist of the double stop variation has 41 different exercises in here, but you can find it linked at the top of the screen. You can just scroll all the way down to the technique section, and it's inside of this particular playlist, as well as over 360 other technique stuff. Before I get to the next tip, I just want to say really quickly that you can find literally thousands of hours of free drumming play-alongs and drumming tips in the link at the top of the description, or by going into my home tab of YouTube. Beginner and intermediate drummers play rolls, and they'll sound like this, where like the second note is low and the second note, the timing is off, where it's not even. Like if this is like the subdivision, the diddle might come in early, it might come in late, etc. So you might play a roll like that or like that, as opposed to rhythmically precise, perfectly in between it. So this exercise helps with that. So the first line, what it's doing by playing a triplet roll, we take that exact same rhythm on the second line and we do an inverted version of that. So there's a single right hand at the start of this followed by a roll. So it's not a tap roll like that. It's where you actually end with a double right as a release. It's taking the roll and putting it so the second note of the diddle is on the subdivision in terms of like that, as opposed to triple let, triple let, triple let, triple let. By having the single right hand, triple let, triple let, triple let, triple let, you're actually getting that second note on the subdivision where you would normally feel that triplet roll. And that makes it so that not only are you intentionally focusing on that more, but it allows you to fix that second note being low. And it also allows you to fix it being out of time. Go to my home tab of YouTube and you scroll back down in the technique section where you'll find this exercise. If you go to any of these roll exercises at the end, like triplet diddle variations or 16th note diddle variations, if you look inside of here, you'll notice that they all have like triplet diddle with 2 counts, triplet diddle with 2 counts, but it's inverted triplet diddle. And then same thing for triplet diddle with 4 counts, and then inverted triplet diddle with 4 counts. So in each one of these inverted variations, it's putting the diddle, displacing it. So it's the exact same rhythm, but it's putting it so that the second note of the beat is actually on the subdivision. And so if you can play through this exercise, whether you're playing it fast or through slow, it really helps with that second note of the diddle whenever you're working on this. If you want to actually make it into open class, and especially if you want to make it into world class, they do not care how many snare breaks or tenor breaks that you know. What they care about is how consistently can you play the basic stuff. Literally, the technique exercises is going to be the thing that they're going to be focusing on the most. Is the consistency that comes from playing these things, which is why I recommend playing like 50 to 60% of your time working on these technique exercises. And then another version of technique stuff that just focuses on rudiments is the grid variations, which is why I recommend 30 to 40% of your time working on grid variations, specifically for rudiment on one, and play them slow. Start at 40 beats a minute, go one click at a time, and let it just gradually get faster on the play along. You'll notice that what I'm saying is like 10%, at most 20% of your time is like working on the chop stuff, like shopping sprees or drum breaks or whatever. That's at most. So if you actually want to make an open class line or you want to make a world class line, stop learning the drum breaks, stop learning the shopping sprees, focus on the grid variations for the basic rudiments like flam drags, cheeses, flam fives, flams, and diddles, and the technique exercises. And that is going to set you apart from everybody else who's sitting there like trying to work on their 4 strokes and learning Blue Coat's snare break from last year or whatever. The instructors don't care about that kind of stuff. They want you to play consistently clean. And the way that you can figure out like, well, how do I practice and what do I practice? Under the tips and lessons section, I've got drum lessons like how to hold traditional grip, how to do the stretch and massage routine that I do, etc. Some of the basics things. But this 16 hours of drumming tips and Q&A, the drumming tips playlist, this is where I answer a bunch of questions like how to prepare for an auditions in a month. That one might be helpful for you if you're auditioning in a month. There's stuff like how to improve the second note of a diddle. There's stuff like how to work on relaxed accent taps or what is touch when drumming. These are all questions that have been asked during all these hundreds of drum streams that I've done. So there's literally over 16 hours of free drumming tips inside of here that will like help you better understand the things that like somebody like myself as a former caption head and like other instructors look for when they are working with a drum line. Sometimes, whether it's for DCI auditions, WGI auditions, or even like admissions into the universities, sometimes they don't have spots open for like percussion programs in the studio or like scholarships available. Like when I got my full ride, I got it because there was one available. But if I had the exact same audition and they didn't have like a spot open, I wouldn't have even gotten into the program. Like that's just how it works. So same thing for like college auditions, for WGI, for DCI auditions. But that being said, if there's like a group that you really want to get into, sometimes just showing up, even when the hopes of them taking somebody who is not marched with that group versus taking like 5 veterans, they're likely going to take the 5 veterans who have all demonstrated they can do it. But if you're there and you're showing that you can hang at that level, that kind of gets your foot a little bit wedged in the door in terms of being able to demonstrate like your attitude to learn, your desire to play at that level, etc. And they get to like know who you are and get that personality going. And that can also open up some doors of like, hey, tenor tech, I would really like to continue to study with you after the end of this audition. And so that way they can see your like improvement over months, etc., as opposed to just that one shot of an audition.